Tom Reed stood at the observation deck of Starbase Delta 7, watching the massive ships of various alien species dock and depart. His reflection in the reinforced glass showed a man in his 40s wearing the standard orange safety vest over his uniform, a piece of equipment that made most aliens snicker when they passed by. The space station hung like a gleaming silver star at the crossroads of three major trade routes. Its corridors buzzed with activity as members of the Galactic Alliance went about their business. Tall, muscular rock warriors stomped around without environmental suits, proud of their ability to withstand extreme conditions. The scaled mountain runners raced through maintenance shafts without safety lines, bragging about their perfect sense of balance. And then there were the humans, always checking their equipment twice, always wearing protective gear, always following safety protocols. The cowards of the galaxy, as many call them. Safety Inspector Reed. A deep voice rumbled behind him. Still hiding behind your protective barriers. Tom turned to face Commander Stonecrusher, a rock warrior twice his size. The alien's granite-like skin sparkled under the station's lights. Like all his kind, he wore no protection, claiming it was a sign of weakness. "Just doing my job, Commander," Tom replied calmly, checking his tablet. "Speaking of which, your crew's last maintenance run on Level 3 violated 6 different safety protocols." Stonecrusher laughed, a sound like rolling boulders. "Protocols, such a human concept. We got the job done, didn't we? No one died." "No one died this time," Tom corrected. "But 3 of your workers got radiation burns that could have been prevented with proper shielding." The commander waved his rocky hand dismissively. "Battle scars build character. This is why humans rank lowest on the courage scale. Always hiding, always planning, always worried about what might go wrong." Tom had heard it all before. The Galactic Alliance's infamous courage scale ranks species based on their willingness to face danger. Humans, with their emphasis on safety measures and risk assessment, sat at the bottom. Rock warriors, mountain runners, and plasma dancers topped the list, celebrated for their brave disregard of danger. Walking through the station's main corridor, Tom passed a group of plasma dancers floating near the ceiling, their energy forms crackling as they performed maintenance without insulated tools. They were admired for their willingness to work directly with electrical systems, even though they lost several workers each year to preventable accidents. His tablet beeped. Another incident report. 3 mountain runners had been injured trying to repair a hull breach without proper vacuum suits. They'd be celebrated for their bravery, given medals for their courageous attempt. The fact that a simple suit would have prevented their injuries wouldn't matter. In his office, Tom looked at the collection of safety certificates on his wall. Documents that other species saw as badges of shame. His desk held pictures of his team, all wearing proper safety gear, all following procedures, all alive and healthy because of it. Inspector Reed. His computer chimed. Routine reactor inspection scheduled in 10 minutes. Tom checked his radiation badge, tested his protective suit's seals, and grabbed his equipment kit. Down in the reactor control room, he found 2 plasma dancers working on exposed power conduits with their bare energy forms. "You should really wear insulation suits," he advised, knowing they wouldn't listen. "Ha, typical human, afraid of a little energy discharge," one sparkled in amusement. "We've only lost 3 workers this month. That's a record low." Tom shook his head and began his inspection. As he worked, he noticed something concerning in the reactor's maintenance logs. The last 3 shifts had skipped crucial cooling system checks, calling them unnecessarily cautious. He filed his report, knowing it would probably be ignored like all the others. But he filed it anyway, documented everything, and followed every procedure. Because that's what humans did. They planned, they prepared, they protected. Let them call it cowardice. Tom knew better. He'd seen enough preventable tragedies to know that true courage wasn't about ignoring danger. It was about facing it intelligently. As he finished his shift, his tablet showed 12 new safety violations, 6 injured workers, and 3 near misses that proper procedures would have prevented. Just another day at the bottom of the courage scale. But something in the reactor readings bothered him. Something that all these brave species were missing in their rush to prove their courage. Something that would soon make them all rethink what it meant to be truly brave. 3 days after his routine inspection, Tom Reed couldn't sleep. The reactor readings kept playing in his mind. Sitting in the station's monitoring room at 3 a.m. station time, he reviewed the data again. The numbers didn't lie. The main reactor's cooling system was showing dangerous patterns. Small spikes in temperature, tiny fluctuations in power output, things that the brave maintenance crews dismissed as normal variations. But Tom had worked with reactors for 20 years. He knew these weren't normal. "Computer, show me maintenance records for the past month," he commanded, sipping his cold coffee. The screen filled with reports, or rather, lack of reports. The Rock Warriors had skipped their cooling system checks, claiming the safety procedures wasted time. The Plasma Dancers had bypassed the warning sensors, calling them unnecessary human paranoia. The Mountain Runners had ignored temperature limits, bragging about their speed. Tom's hands tightened around his coffee cup. "Computer, run simulation based on current reactor trends." The results made him spill his coffee. According to the simulation, they had maybe 2 weeks before something went critically wrong. Morning came, bringing the usual buzz of activity to the station. Tom walked quickly to the station chief's office, his tablet filled with evidence. Chief Williams, one of the few other humans on the senior staff, looked up as he entered. "Tom, you look like you haven't slept." "Because I haven't." Tom placed his tablet on the chief's desk. "Look at these readings. The reactor's showing early signs of cascade failure." Williams studied the data, his face growing serious. "Are you sure about this? Run your own simulations. Check the patterns. We need to shut down the reactor for a full inspection and repair." The chief rubbed his temples. "You know what happened last time we suggested that? The Alliance Council called us paranoid humans and overruled us. Then we need to make them listen this time," Tom insisted. "Because if we don't, we're looking at a potential meltdown." An emergency council meeting was called. Representatives from all species gathered in the main conference room. Tom stood before them, presenting his findings. "These temperature variations show a clear pattern of degradation," he explained, pointing to the graphs. "The safety systems," interrupted a mountain runner, his scales gleaming under the lights. "Always hiding behind your precious safety systems. The reactor works fine." A Plasma Dancer crackled in agreement. "We work directly with the power conduits. There's nothing wrong that requires your human overcautiousness." Commander Stonecrusher stood up, his rocky form casting a shadow over Tom. "This is typical human behavior. You see danger in every shadow, risk in every task. The reactor has operated for years without your constant worrying." "Operated, yes," Tom replied firmly. "But look at these readings. The core temperature is rising. The cooling systems are struggling. We're seeing power fluctuations that fluctuations are normal." The Plasma Dancer sparkled angrily. "We're not shutting down the reactor for your baseless fears." The council voted. 17 species against, 2 in favor, both human. Tom's warning was officially dismissed. Walking back to his office, Tom heard the usual mockery. "There goes the coward, jumping at shadows. Typical human, always afraid. Maybe he needs a safety blanket." But Tom wasn't done. That night, he began secretly documenting everything. He set up independent monitoring systems, installed backup sensors, and started preparing emergency procedures, just in case. His human colleagues understood. They helped him gather data, double-check readings, and prepare contingency plans. The other species saw them working and laughed at their paranoid behavior. A week passed. The reactor's warnings grew stronger. Minor systems started failing. The brave maintenance crews fixed them quickly, ignoring proper procedures, claiming victory even as more problems appeared. Tom watched the readings get worse each day. His simulations now showed total failure within a week. He tried one last time to warn the council, sending a detailed report of the degrading conditions. They didn't even read it. Standing at his favorite observation window, Tom watched the ships come and go, knowing that soon, very soon, everyone would learn the difference between bravery and recklessness. The reactor's hum had changed. Few noticed it, but Tom did. Time was running out. The alarm started at midnight, station time. Tom Reed was already awake, watching his monitoring screens when the reactor's status changed from yellow to red. The sound of blaring sirens filled the massive space station. Warning: reactor core temperature exceeding safety limits. The station's computer announced calmly. Critical failure imminent. Tom grabbed his pre-packed emergency kit and radiation suit. He'd kept them ready for the past week, knowing this moment would come. As he rushed toward the reactor control room, the station shook with its first major power surge. The corridors filled with confused crew members. Most of the alien species looked more annoyed than worried. They'd ignored so many warnings that even now, they didn't understand the danger. Commander Stonecrusher's voice boomed over the station speakers. "This is nothing but a minor fluctuation. We will handle this the warrior way, with direct action." Tom reached the reactor control room just in time to see a team of rock warriors marching toward the reactor core. They wore no protection, proud of their natural armor. "Stop!" Tom shouted. "The radiation levels air." But they ignored him. The rock warriors entered the reactor chamber, beating their chests in what they called a courage display. Through the observation window, Tom watched in horror as they approached the overheating core. The first warrior fell within minutes. Even their stone-like skin couldn't protect them from the intense radiation. The second and third followed shortly after, their brave charges ending in painful retreats. "Get a medical team down here," Tom called into his communicator. "And bring radiation treatment kits." The plasma dancers tried next. They believed their energy forms could handle any power surge. They flew into the reactor's electrical systems, trying to absorb the excess energy. The resulting explosion threw them back like scattered lightning. 3 plasma dancers disappeared completely, their energy forms overwhelmed by the reactor's power. The station shook again, harder this time. Emergency lights flashed as backup systems began failing. Warning: core temperature approaching critical levels. Containment failure predicted in 45 minutes. Mountain runners scaled the reactor's outer shell, attempting to manually activate emergency cooling vents. 2 of them fell when their section of handholds melted from the heat. The others retreated, their scales smoking from radiation exposure. The station's chief appeared beside Tom, already wearing his radiation suit. "How bad is it?" Tom showed him the readings. "The core's going to breach unless we shut it down properly. But the manual controls are too hot to approach now. We needed to do this days ago." Another explosion rocked the station. More alarms joined the chorus. Warning: hull integrity compromised on level 5. Emergency bulkheads engaging. The observation room filled with representatives from different species, all watching their best warriors fail one after another. Their faces showed something new. Fear. Real fear, not the mocking kind they directed at humans. "Nothing's working," a mountain runner hissed. "Our strongest, our bravest, all failed." Commander Stonecrusher limped in, his rocky skin glowing red from radiation exposure. Perhaps we should have listened to the human warnings." The station shook again. On the monitors, Tom watched as entire sections lost power. 3,000 people were aboard the station. 3,000 lives at risk, because no one had listened to cowardly human caution. Warning: core breach in 30 minutes. Station-wide evacuation recommended. But evacuation wasn't an option. The nearest safe port was 2 hours away. Even if they could get everyone to ships in time, the reactor explosion would catch them before they reached safe distance. Tom looked at his fellow humans. They had already put on their radiation suits, checked their equipment, and gathered their emergency kits. They weren't running. They weren't trying to prove their bravery. They were preparing to solve the problem the human way, with planning, protection, and proper procedures. "Chief," Tom said, "I have a plan, but I'll need every human engineer and maintenance worker we've got." "You'll have them," the chief replied. "What's the plan?" "The one we prepared for. The one these brave species mocked us for even thinking about." Around them, the station's mighty frame groaned as systems continued to fail. The reactor's angry roar grew louder. Time for human cowardice to show its true worth. Tom Reed stood before a group of 12 humans in the emergency briefing room. All wore radiation suits, all had their equipment checked and double-checked. On the wall, the station's countdown showed 25 minutes until core breach. "Listen up," Tom said, his voice clear through the suit's communicator. "We've drilled for this. Everyone knows their part." Engineer Baker raised her hand. "The radiation levels are higher than in our simulations. Our suits will only last 20 minutes at those levels." "That's why we work in teams," Tom replied. "Team 1 will start. When their radiation warnings hit red, Team 2 goes in. We rotate every 15 minutes to stay safe." The aliens watching from the doorway muttered among themselves. To them, this careful planning looked like more human cowardice, but they'd stopped laughing now. "Roberts, get the maintenance robots ready," Tom ordered. "Miller, prep the remote tools. Johnson, set up the mobile cooling units." Warning: core breach in 23 minutes. The humans moved with practiced efficiency. While other species had rushed in hoping for glory, the humans had spent their time preparing. Roberts activated 6 maintenance robots, machines the other species considered cowardly tools. Miller's remote handling equipment, once mocked as afraid to touch things, stood ready. Tom led Team 1 toward the reactor. They stopped at a safety checkpoint, and everyone checked each other's suits again. More alien whispers, more head-shaking at this waste of time. "Team 1, remember," Tom said. "No heroes. You feel sick, you get out. Your suit warns, you get out. We do this right. We do this safe." They entered the reactor control room. The heat was visible in waves, distorting the air. Where the rock warriors had tried to punch through problems and plasma dancers had tried to absorb energy, the humans set up their equipment methodically. "Roberts, send in the robots." The maintenance robots rolled forward, their heat-shielded frames carrying cooling equipment. Miller operated the remote handlers, carefully opening panels that were too hot for even suited humans to touch. Warning: core breach in 19 minutes. "Baker, start the emergency cooling sequence," Tom directed. "Johnson, monitor the radiation levels." The aliens watched through the observation window as the humans worked. No charging in, no dramatic gestures, no individual heroics. Just careful, coordinated teamwork. "Sir," Baker called. "First cooling line is in place. Temperature dropping in Section 1. The robots continued their work, guided by human hands staying safely behind shielding. When one robot failed in the intense heat, they simply sent in another. Warning: core breach in 15 minutes. "Team 1, radiation warnings are yellow," Johnson reported. "Time to rotate." Without argument, without trying to prove anything, Team 1 pulled back. Team 2 moved in smoothly, continuing the work without interruption. A mountain runner watching the procedure shook his head. They keep backing away. How can they get anything done? But the reactor's angry roar had started to quiet. The temperature gauges, which had been climbing for days, began to slow their rise. "Sir," Miller called from his remote station, "we've got access to the main cooling bypass, ready to attempt restart." Tom checked the readings. Everything followed their practiced procedure. No shortcuts, no risks, no glory-seeking. Warning: core breach in 12 minutes. "Do it," Tom ordered. The remote handlers moved with precision, rerouting coolant through the backup systems they'd prepared. The robots adjusted their positions, working together like a well-rehearsed dance. The reactor's scream changed pitch. Temperature dropping in all sections, Baker reported. Core pressure stabilizing. The humans didn't cheer. They didn't celebrate. They kept working, kept checking readings, kept following procedures. Warning: core temperature critical levels decreasing. Breach risk reducing. Team 2's radiation warnings hit yellow. They rotated out. Team 1 moved back in. The aliens watching had fallen silent, their mockery forgotten as they watched humans demonstrate their own kind of courage. Core temperature approaching safe levels, the computer announced. Breach risk neutralized. Only then did Tom allow himself a small smile behind his faceplate. Not because they'd saved the station, though they had. Not because they'd proved the aliens wrong, though they had. He smiled because every member of his team was going home safe, because doing things the cowardly human way meant doing them right. The cowards had succeeded where the brave had failed. 2 hours after the crisis, Tom Reed sat in the station's main conference room. The reactor hummed quietly in the background, properly cooled and stable for the first time in weeks. Around the table sat representatives from every species on the station, their attitudes noticeably different from just days ago. Commander Stonecrusher's usually proud posture was bent with pain. Radiation burns covered his rocky skin. "How many casualties from the human teams?" he asked, expecting numbers like his own squad's 8 injured warriors. "0, Tom replied simply. Everyone went home safe. The conference room filled with murmurs. The plasma dancers, their energy forms still flickering weakly from their failed attempt, glowed with surprise. The mountain runners, treating their burns and broken bones, exchanged glances. 0, a mountain runner asked. "But you were closest to the core. You worked the longest." Tom pulled up the mission logs on the main screen. "Let me show you why." He played videos from their helmet cameras. "See how each team rotated out before radiation exposure got dangerous. How we use robots for the worst areas. How everyone checked their safety gear." The aliens watched the footage. They saw humans working steadily, carefully, without the dramatic charges or bold individual actions they'd always celebrated. But all these preparations, a plasma dancer sparkled weakly. They take so much time, so much effort. "Yes," Tom agreed. "We spent months preparing emergency procedures. We maintained safety equipment. We ran drills. All those things you called cowardly. They're why we succeeded where direct attacks failed." The station's chief stepped forward. "The numbers are clear. The brave approach resulted in 23 injured, 5 critical, and 3 dead. The human approach: full success, 0 casualties, and a properly repaired reactor." Commander Stonecrusher stood painfully. Perhaps we have misunderstood courage." "Courage isn't about not feeling fear," Tom said quietly. "It's about facing danger intelligently, about caring enough to prepare, to protect others, to do things right instead of just rushing in." A young rock warrior raised his hand. Could you teach us your safety procedures?" The room went silent. Never before had a rock warrior asked to learn human methods. They'd always seen it as beneath them. "Of course," Tom replied. "We start with the basics. First rule: everyone goes home safe." More hands went up. More questions came. Species that had looked down on humans for years now wanted to learn their ways. Tom brought up training schedules, safety protocols, emergency procedures, all the things they'd mocked as cowardly overhead. "It's not exciting," he warned them. "No glory. No epic tales of individual bravery. Just careful work and everyone surviving." "We've had enough glory," Commander Stonecrusher rumbled. "We've lost enough warriors to prove our courage. Perhaps it's time to prove our wisdom instead." The next day, Tom saw something he'd never expected. Rock warriors wearing safety harnesses while doing repairs. Mountain runners checking their equipment before climbs. Even plasma dancers using insulated tools. In the reactor room, where the crisis had peaked, a mixed team of humans and aliens worked together. The aliens were clumsy with their safety gear at first, but they listened and learned. They stopped rushing, started checking, began to understand. "It feels strange," a rock warrior admitted, adjusting his safety vest. "Like I'm hiding from danger." "You're not hiding," Tom explained. "You're respecting danger. Big difference." Looking around the station, Tom saw changes everywhere. Warning signs were no longer ignored. Safety procedures were followed, not mocked. The constant competition to prove courage through recklessness had been replaced by something new: responsibility. The station's hum was steady now, healthy, like a pulse stabilized after a near-fatal crisis. But the biggest change wasn't in the machinery. It was in the minds of those who operated it. They'd learned that sometimes the greatest courage wasn't in charging forward, but in taking a step back. Not in facing danger alone, but in working together to make things safer for everyone. The cowards had become the teachers, and the brave had become willing students. 1 month after the reactor crisis, Tom Reed walked through the station's corridors. The changes he saw still surprised him. Where once there had been chaos and competition, now there was order and cooperation. The morning safety meeting, previously attended only by humans, now had representatives from every species. They sat in the briefing room, actually paying attention as Tom reviewed incident reports and safety procedures. "Last month, we had only 3 minor accidents," Tom announced. "Compare that to our previous average of 20 major incidents per month." Commander Stonecrusher, his rocky skin finally healed from the radiation burns, nodded in approval. "And production efficiency is up 30%, even with all these new safety measures." The data displayed on the main screen told the story clearly. Fewer injuries meant more workers staying on the job. Better procedures meant fewer equipment failures. What they had lost in speed, they had more than gained in reliability. A plasma dancer floated up, their energy form stable within new safety containment fields. "We have not lost a single worker this month. First time in our station's history." Tom watched as a team of rock warriors passed by the briefing room window. Each wore a full safety harness while carrying heavy equipment. A month ago, they would have considered such protection an insult to their strength. Now they wore it with a different kind of pride. "Team lead reporting," one warrior called through his communicator. "Equipment checked, safety protocols verified, beginning maintenance work." In the reactor control room, mountain runners worked alongside humans, all wearing proper protection. They had learned that their natural agility worked even better when supported by good safety gear. "Check my harness," a young runner asked her human partner. "Always," the human replied, carefully inspecting the equipment. Both smiled at this new ritual of mutual protection. The station's chief called Tom to his office that afternoon. On his desk sat a report from the Galactic Alliance Council. "They want to make our station's safety program the standard across the entire alliance," the chief said. "They're calling it the Reed Protocol." Tom picked up the report, reading the details. The alliance had analyzed the reactor incident thoroughly. Their conclusions were clear. The human approach to safety had not just prevented disaster. It had proven superior in every measurable way. "There's more," the chief continued. "The courage scale is being revised. They're adding new criteria: preventive planning, risk management, and team protection." A group of alien cadets walked past the office, each carrying safety manuals. They were part of the first class of the station's new safety academy, where humans taught their methods to other species. In the maintenance bay, Tom stopped to watch a mixed team practicing emergency procedures. Rock warriors, mountain runners, plasma dancers, and humans all worked together, following protocols that would have been dismissed as cowardly just a month ago. "Safety check complete," a rock warrior announced. "Permission to begin repair sequence." "Granted," their human supervisor replied. "Remember, steady pace, no rushing." The station's computer spoke up. "Monthly safety inspection complete. All systems operating within optimal parameters. 0 significant incidents reported." Tom remembered how that same computer had once counted daily accidents, injuries, and deaths. The change wasn't just in numbers, it was in mindset. Later that day, he found a group of young aliens in the training room, studying human safety manuals. They weren't there because they had to be. They were there because they wanted to learn. Mr. Reed, a young rock warrior, called out, "Is it true that humans have something called preventive maintenance?" "Yes," Tom smiled. "Would you like to learn about it?" "Please," the warrior said. "We want to learn everything." The station's hum was different now. Steady, controlled, safe, like the beating heart of a healthy body, maintained by those who understood that true courage meant protecting life, not risking it needlessly. The cowards had changed the definition of bravery, and the galaxy was better for it. As Tom walked back to his office, he passed a new sign on the station's main corridor. "Everyone goes home safe." Below it, written in every species language, was a simple truth they had all finally learned. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the wisdom to face it properly. 6 months after the reactor incident, Tom Reed stood at his favorite observation window. A delegation from the Galactic Alliance was arriving today. Their massive ship, now equipped with human-designed safety systems, docked smoothly at the station. The changes he'd seen in the past months still amazed him. Throughout the galaxy, stations and ships had started adopting what they now called human standard safety protocols. The very things that had once marked humans as cowards had become the gold standard for space operations. The station's main meeting hall was packed with representatives from every species. Tom watched as Commander Stone Crusher, now the station's safety director, adjusted his protective gear before addressing the crowd. 1 year ago, the commander's voice rumbled. "I would have laughed at wearing this safety equipment. I would have called it a sign of weakness." He paused, looking at his protective gear. "I was wrong. We were all wrong." The Alliance delegation listened as species after species shared their stories. A mountain runner talked about how their accident rate had dropped to 0. A plasma dancer demonstrated their new containment systems that let them work more efficiently than ever. "The courage scale has been completely redesigned," announced the Alliance chief, standing at the podium. "Humanity's ranking has moved from last place to first, not because they change, but because we finally understood what true courage means." Tom thought back to all the mockery, all the jokes about human cowardice. Now those same species were implementing human safety measures across the galaxy. Ships, stations, and planetary bases all ran on what they once dismissed as human overcautiousness. A young rock warrior cadet approached Tom after the ceremony. "Mr. Reed, is it true that humans have been using safety protocols for centuries?" "Yes," Tom smiled. "We learned the hard way that bravery without wisdom leads to needless loss." "But weren't you afraid of being called cowards?" "Being called a coward is better than watching people die needlessly," Tom replied. "True courage isn't about what others call you. It's about doing what's right." The station's computer spoke up, giving its daily report. Safety status: optimal. Total accidents this quarter across all Alliance stations implementing human standard protocols, reduced by 99.9%. In the reactor room, where it all began, a plaque now hung on the wall. It showed an image of the human maintenance team in their safety gear, and below it, words that had become famous across the galaxy. "Courage is not measured by the risks you take, but by the lives you save." The Alliance chief approached Tom with a data pad. "Every station, every ship, every operation in Alliance space wants to implement your safety programs. They're calling it the greatest advancement in space operations since faster-than-light travel." Tom watched through the observation window as ships came and went. Each one now carried the distinctive marks of human safety protocols: protective shields, emergency systems, backup procedures. The very things that had made humans cowards were now making space travel safer for everyone. "You know what's truly remarkable," the station's chief said, joining Tom at the window. "We didn't change who we are. We didn't become reckless to prove our courage. Instead, the galaxy changed to understand our kind of bravery. In the training rooms, aliens and humans worked together, learning from each other. The aliens brought their natural strengths and abilities, now made more effective through human safety methods. The humans shared their careful planning and protection protocols, enhanced by alien technologies. A group of cadets passed by, wearing their safety gear with pride. Their uniforms bore a new patch, a human safety helmet surrounded by stars, with words that had become the Alliance's new motto. The bravest act is keeping others safe. Tom smiled as he watched the station operate smoothly, efficiently, and most importantly, safely. The cowards had taught the galaxy a new definition of courage. Not the courage of reckless charges and glorious deaths, but the courage of careful planning, of protecting others, of doing things right. In the end, it wasn't about who was brave and who was cowardly. It was about understanding that true courage wears many forms, and sometimes the greatest bravery lies in taking the time to make sure everyone goes home safe. The cowardly humans had changed the galaxy, not through force or daring, but through wisdom and care. And that was the bravest thing of all.